All right, I want to take a quick minute to go over some student projects. And this is going to show, just give you a heads up on what other folks are working on, but also show maybe where you should be at different stages of this course so far. The important thing I want you to do is as you complete every single Free Code Camp challenge, you want to add it to your own site. Every single thing. So if it's a link, if you're doing an image, now if you're coloring the background of something, you're changing the font, every single thing should be added to your own site. This is for your glitch interests page. And this is to be something like your repertoire, right? Like something that you could reach back if you're designing a new site and you forgot, how do I style that image, or how do I make this jump to the bottom? You can go back and look at your own code and take your snippets and apply it. So it's very important that you apply every single one of these to your page. But that's going to mean that your page is going to look pretty ugly, right? It's not going to look like a modern web page. And that's a good thing. This is the one time when ugly is good. So I'm going to show some examples from some student work that I think are really great. This is an example of what you should look like, I believe, at the end of day 3, the start of day 4. This is right before you get into CSS. This is pretty much illustrating all the elements that you learned with HTML. You've got some, I think this is some block quotes in here. You've got some bullets, a simple input, but you can see that there's a placeholder, and when you hover over the input, it says, please fill out this field. That's really great. The submit button is right there, and you've got radio buttons working. So this is a good start to where you need to be. As you start to introduce CSS, I'd like to show you what that looks like. This is a good example of a page where the developer is starting to mess around with CSS and starting to understand, hey, I can make the background green. How cool is that? I'll show you a little trick right now, too, that you might find fun. On Chrome, and I believe other browsers, but I'm using Google Chrome right now, you can press F12. And that'll open what's called the console window here on the right-hand side. Some people say it's an inspector or whatever. A lot of times as developers, we just say open the console. And so what's cool is that you can select different things to view your page on. And so right now we've got selected iPhone 6, 7, and 8. These are different devices to view your page on. So this is for the iPhone 6, 7, or 8. And you can see that this is what the page looks like on mobile. How cool is that? And this is an important way to test the jump to bottom feature. If you're like, if we hit F12 again, we go back to this view. Perhaps your page isn't that long. This page is. But if your page is a little smaller like this, you can test the jump to bottom link by hitting F12 and showing a mobile view. And so that's what we've done. We've selected the iPhone 6, 7, 8 mobile view here. And you can just scroll down. I'm sorry. We want to hit the jump to bottom. Bang. And you can see that it just did it. And you can see that the ID is footer, just like the developer programmed. And you can see that they're messing around with all these other HTML elements that are really important that you learn. So this is a good example. And like I said, it's not like a super pretty, fancy whatever. This is, here's external links. Great. It's just an example of collecting all the things that this developer has learned. There's another view. You can hit this toggle device toolbar. If you don't see this device right here, you can toggle device toolbar. And now your console is here on the right, and you can drag and basically this is just a cheap trick that we do to replicate different browser sizes. So you can see in the upper right-hand corner as I move it right up here by the fish, watch as I move it by the fish, the numbers change. That's the width changing. So if you want to test it on a 720 pixel browser, here you go. That's what it looks like if someone's like on an iPad. And so you can just do that. Or if you say, well, they've got a really small phone, it's a 360 pixel, you would scroll down till it says that. But I accidentally made it disappear. I think this glitch thing might be messing with it a little bit. But that's a good way. There you go. There it's back. It's a good way is to drag this over on your computer, or if you just click this toggle device toolbar, boom, now I'm viewing it as a mobile responsive website. Let's see here. There we go. And let's do that again. Okay. It's a little buggy right now because we'll actually learn this later on, but there's a way to make sure that this text stays the same size and it doesn't get small. You can see it got a little small right now by toggling this back and forth. But we'll fix that, and I'll show you how to fix that later on. But the point is that it's a good way to test your thing at different sizes so your jump to bottom will work for you. Here's another good example of a developer working with CSS. And like I said, it does not need to be pretty. It just needs to do the thing, right? It needs to work. So you need to have an example of, oh, here's how I cropped an image into a circle and put a border around it. Great. If that border's bright green, perfect. Doesn't matter. You're going to get, you'll be able to fine tune these things later on. In fact, a lot of times as a developer, I use bright green and bright red on my colors when I'm adjusting something so that I can see the difference that it's making. If I'm, a lot of times in an application we're messing with very fine shades of gray, I'll just say, forget about it, and I'll just make it bright green so I can tell that, oh, here's what I'm affecting. Here's the border. Here's how wide it is. So I make it bright green in development, and then I knock it back to that shade of gray that's required. And you can see they're messing around with some font color down here, some different fonts. This is great. This is a great example. This is exactly where you need to be at the end of day 4, and you'll be adding more stuff on day 5 in CSS. I think there's 3 days of CSS. Here's another good example of a developer using just bright green. But this is how I can tell that I can make a background. Look, they've got they've got an input right here. They've got a button right here, some checkboxes, different fonts they were able to mess with. I love it. Again, this works when you click to the bottom. In fact, they're being creative and your ID doesn't have to say footer. It can be whatever you want it to say. The ID can say types, or bananas. I think we have one of our developers. No, this says footer. One of our developers I saw had bananas. I thought, great. That's you're understanding the concept that you can name the ID whatever, and that this is going to just jump to whatever ID you have. In fact, you could give an ID to any of these elements. An H1, I think this is an H1. You could give it to an input field. You can give it an ID, and then when you click types, it could take you to that input field. Very cool. Here's another example of a developer messing around with CSS. You can see a different font up here. Link, again, it's the same type of thing, linking. And here they did a great job of saying links to studies instead of link to the bottom of the page or whatever. They just said links to studies. And this is a good example of, this is what you'll see. They're making a real form, and they've got a background and a background color. And it's a great example of starting to really build with HTML and CSS. These are real websites at this point. I think it's really great. Finally, here's another example. It's the same sort of thing. And this developer is moving just a little further on and able to mess with margins and applying some visual design elements. So I think this is starting to look like a real website. I love this background color, slight gray, the different color for the font here. The different fonts actually used throughout this is very creative. You have this italicized font here. And then again, the background border is green. And here you've got a different, instead of a go to the bottom, you've got a return to the top. Great. So they're really applying all the different concepts in their own way. And like I said, it doesn't have to be even as pretty as this. I really like this example where it's just, boom, here's a highlighted thing, here's some bullet points, here's some numbers. It should just be a collection of everything you've learned from Free Code Camp. It doesn't have to be, it's not something that you really ever want to show anyone. It's just something that you're doing to learn these concepts, to be interested in. These developers were kind enough to let me show these off today, but I want to do this just to say that we're all in this kind of together. You can hopefully see the similarity in what you're building with what these other developers are building. Hopefully you can see that, oh, we're all kind of getting this. And that's really the goal, is as you go through every single one of these, just add every single one of them to your own page, so that when we make something nicer in the future, you can pull off of those examples and say, oh, here's how I styled numbered lists before, and here's the font that I used that I really liked before. So you have one collection of everything, and then as you build other things, you can pull from there. That's all there is to it.